In this video, I want to look at GenMapper and how GenMapper could help make an assessment of church health, an individual church, or a large and growing network. Say, for example, a network leader had 50 district leaders, and each of those district leaders had an average of 10 leaders under them, and you've got 500 leaders. So in this example, there would be 3 churches average for each of those 500 leaders. How could a network leader look at a map of those 1,500 churches? What's the health of those churches? What's needed to make them healthier? What's needed to keep multiplication going in this network? And GenMapper could help make that assessment. To get our picture of church health, we need to answer some questions about this church. And each of these questions are associated with a different icon. We need to know how many attendees, including seekers, of those that attend, how many are believers, and of those that are believers, how many are baptized, and is a believer's baptism taking place in this church? Is the Lord's Supper taking place? And is the church multiplying? We're going to ask if the church has a leader appointed. Has he been trained? We're going to ask if there's an obedience-based discipleship program in this church. Are they praying together, worshiping together? Is there fellowship? And is the church giving? We're also going to be asking what churches were started from this church, and did those churches start any? We're also going to have 2 kinds of circles that represent our churches. One is going to be, it's a church with a closed circle. The other is a dotted circle, that it's a group. It's a Bible study on the way becoming a church. This will help us with our assessment. And we'll be asking about, is the leader from within, or do they come from another mother church to lead the services? Is believers' baptism happening within those believers, or does somebody come from outside to baptize? Does somebody come from outside to do the Lord's Supper? And then we'll see that those, if they're inside, the GenMapper will draw that inside the circle. If they're coming from outside, they'll draw it outside the circle. Once those questions are entered into the app, then the GenMapper draws the diagram. And we can see in this example that there's a church that was started in 2017, and it started 2 churches in 2018. And we can look at these things. We know the size of it, how many are attending, of those, how many are believers, how many are baptized. And then we could begin to see, okay, the leaders are inside, but we could begin to ask, why was it that in 2018, 2 churches were started, and since then, no churches have been started? And why is it there is no dotted line work? Why, if there are 100 believers in these 3 churches, is there no Bible study from their family members in another place that has a potential of being a church? And so these are some things we began to look at this and assess the church health. What might be needed? What kind of teaching would help this church become more healthy, which would help them to multiply? The download for the GenMapper is at genmapper.com. But you don't have to wait till you've downloaded the app. This could be done using these same questions, and all of this could be drawn by hand on paper. And then there's an assessment tool now available for what is the church health. Is more Bible study needed? Is Bible study needed on the priesthood of the believer, on believers' baptism, on giving? What is this map telling us? Is we're looking at it from sort of an assessment, a spiritual medical assessment on the health of the church. What's needed for a healthy, growing, multiplying church?